In 1080 AD, a Swedish king named Sven led an armed rebellion. His crime? Refusing to stop worshipping Odin and Thor. Within 20 years, he was dead, and so was an entire religion that had survived for over 500 years. But here's what nobody talks about. When the Norse gods fell, Scandinavia didn't just lose some myths and statues. They lost an entire system, a way of organizing society, settling disputes, and understanding power itself. Today, we know Thor from Marvel movies. We know Odin from video games. The real Norse religion? The one that Viking kings were willing to die for? That's been erased so completely that most people have no idea what actually disappeared. This isn't a story about missionary priests converting happy villagers. This is about kings dismantling their own culture, piece by piece, for reasons that had almost nothing to do with faith. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what made the old religion so powerful, and why that same power made it impossible to survive. Part 1. The system they destroyed. Let's start with what the Norse religion actually was, because it wasn't what you think. When we hear Norse religion, we picture Vikings praying to Thor before battle. Maybe some guy in robes performing sacrifices. Individual believers doing individual things. Wrong. The Norse religion wasn't primarily about personal faith. It was the operating system for their entire society. Here's how it worked. In Viking Age Scandinavia, there was no separation between church and state, because there was no church. The king wasn't just a political leader, he was the chief religious officer. When the Swedish kings held feasts at Uppsala, they weren't just partying. They were performing rituals that people believed kept the kingdom stable, the crops growing, and the community intact. Local chieftains did the same thing at regional sanctuaries. They led sacrifices, they maintained sacred sites, and they controlled the religious calendar. Religion and political power were completely fused together. This is crucial to understand. Dismantling Norse religion meant dismantling the entire power structure. Now here's the second thing most people get wrong. There was no Norse church, no priests in the Christian sense, no central authority writing down the correct beliefs, no one enforcing orthodoxy across Scandinavia. Instead, religious knowledge passed down through chieftain families. Your local lord probably led the ceremonies. His son learned by watching him. Different regions had different practices. Iceland did things differently than Norway. Norway did things differently than Sweden. This flexibility was a strength until Christianity arrived. Then it became a fatal weakness. Because when a Christian king converted, he didn't just change his personal beliefs, he shut down the entire system. And there was no religious institution to fight back, no pagan pope, no sacred texts everyone agreed on, just local chieftains suddenly losing their religious authority overnight. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we talk about how it fell, you need to understand what made the old religion so powerful in the first place. Part 2, the 5 pillars they targeted. The Christian kings who dismantled Norse religion didn't do it randomly, they were strategic. They identified 5 specific elements and attacked each one systematically. Let's go through them. Pillar 1, the king's sacred role. In Norse belief, the king wasn't just appointed by gods, he was descended from them. Swedish kings claimed ancestry from Freyr, the fertility god. They called themselves Freyr's offspring in their own poetry. This wasn't symbolic. People actually believed their king had divine blood, which gave him the power to guarantee good harvests and peace. The king performed rituals at major feasts, sacrifices that maintained cosmic order. When a king converted to Christianity, the first thing he did was stop performing these rituals. No more sacrifices at the temple, no more sacred feasts where he played the role of divine intermediary. Imagine being a Viking farmer watching your king, who you believed had god blood running through his veins, suddenly announce that actually those gods don't exist, those rituals are worthless, and everything your ancestors believed was a lie. That's not a religious conversion. That's reality collapsing. Pillar 2, local religious leadership. Remember, there were no professional priests. Local chieftains ran the ceremonies. They maintained the temples. They decided when to sacrifice, what to sacrifice, and how to interpret omens. Christian kings systematically removed these chieftains from their religious roles, sometimes through persuasion, sometimes through force, sometimes by simply building a church on top of their sacred site and installing a Christian priest. At Frösö in Sweden, an island literally named after the god Freyr, archaeologists found evidence of pagan sacrifices performed around a sacred tree. Later, Christians built a church on that exact spot. They didn't just replace the religion, they physically erased the old sacred space. This happened everywhere. And without local leaders maintaining the traditions, the knowledge simply died. Pillar 3. The physical cult sanctuaries, temples, sacred groves, idol statues, ritual objects. The Christians destroyed them systematically. We have eyewitness accounts of Christian kings ordering temples burned, of sacred images smashed, of ritual equipment thrown into rivers. Adam of Bremen, writing around 1075, described the great temple at Uppsala, golden statues of Thor, Odin, and Freyr, regular sacrifices, a sacred grove where every tree was considered divine. Within decades, it was gone. Here's why this mattered. Norse religion was about doing, not just believing. You sacrificed at certain times, you visited certain places, you performed certain actions. When the places disappeared and the actions were banned, the religion had nowhere to exist. Pillar 4. Sacred customs and sacrifices. Norse religious life revolved around communal feasts. You'd gather at certain times of year, sacrifice animals, especially horses, cook the meat, and feast together while drinking ale that had been blessed. These weren't just parties. They were how communities bonded, how disputes were settled, how social hierarchies were reinforced, how people connected with the divine. Christian kings banned them, first the sacrifices, then eating horse meat entirely, then the sacred drinking ceremonies. Medieval Scandinavian laws are full of these prohibitions. No one shall sacrifice to the old gods. No one shall eat horse meat. No one shall hold pagan feasts. Without the feasts, the community rituals that held Norse religion together simply stopped happening. Pillar 5. The gods themselves. This is the most fascinating one. Christian writers couldn't deny that Norse gods existed in the stories. Thor was too famous. Odin was too important. So they used a clever strategy. They changed what the gods were. They promoted a theory called euhemerism, the idea that pagan gods were just ancient human kings who got deified after death. Snorri Sturluson, writing in the 1220s, describes Odin as a chieftain who migrated from Asia and became so powerful people worshipped him. This wasn't random storytelling. This was weaponized mythology. If the gods were just dead humans, they couldn't answer prayers. They couldn't provide protection. They couldn't do anything. Other Christian writers took a different approach. Demons. They claimed the Norse gods were devils deceiving people. Either way, the message was clear. These beings weren't divine. And once you convince people their gods aren't actually gods, the religion is finished. Part 3. Why it couldn't survive. Why did an entire religion collapse in just a few generations? 3 reasons. First, no institutional defense. Christianity had the church, a massive, organized institution with trained priests, written doctrines, and hierarchical authority. When a Christian community faced persecution, the church could preserve the faith, train new priests, and maintain orthodoxy. Norse religion had none of that. When kings stopped performing rituals and local chieftains lost authority, there was nobody to pass the knowledge to. No religious schools, no written scriptures everyone could reference, just oral traditions that died when the people who remembered them died. Second, political pragmatism. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most kings converted for political reasons, not spiritual ones. Christianity gave them access to European trade networks. It let them marry Christian princesses and form alliances with powerful kingdoms. It provided legitimacy in the eyes of foreign rulers. The Norwegian king Olaf Tryggvason converted and immediately started marrying into Christian royal families. He wasn't having a mystical experience. He was playing geopolitics. And once the king converted, he needed his subjects to convert too, because a Christian king ruling pagan subjects created endless complications. So the dismantling began. Third, Christianity offered something Norse religion couldn't. Norse religion was local. Your chieftain led ceremonies at your local temple. Your community gathered for feasts. Everything was tied to specific places and specific families. Christianity was universal. Same God everywhere. Same rituals everywhere. Same priests using the same Latin prayers from Iceland to Italy. For ambitious kings trying to build larger kingdoms, Christianity provided a unifying framework that transcended local loyalties. Norse religion, by its very nature, reinforced local power. Christianity centralized it. The religion that had been Scandinavia's strength, flexible, local, integrated with community life, became its weakness in a world of centralized Christian kingdoms. Part 4. What we actually lost. Obviously, we lost the religion itself, the rituals, the ceremonies, the sacred practices. By 1200, nobody in Scandinavia was sacrificing to Odin anymore. But we lost something deeper. We lost an entire worldview where religion wasn't separate from politics, law, community, or daily life, where your local leader was also your religious guide, where disputes were settled at sacred assemblies, where the king's legitimacy came from divine ancestry, not just military power. We lost oral traditions that had survived for centuries, myths, poems, genealogies that were never written down and simply vanished. We lost sacred sites. The sources mention temples and groves, but we don't know exactly where most of them were. Archaeologists keep finding new ones by accident. We lost the knowledge of rituals. We know they sacrificed. We don't know exactly how, or what words they spoke, or what the ceremonies meant to the people performing them. Most painfully, we lost it so completely that even the stories we do have come filtered through Christian writers. Snorri Sturluson, our best source for Norse myths, was a Christian writing 200 years after Iceland converted. How much did he change? How much did he misunderstand? We'll never know. The Norse gods didn't fade away peacefully. They were actively dismantled by kings who had political reasons to destroy them, using strategies that exploited every weakness in how the old religion was organized. And it worked so well that within a few generations, the living religion became mythology. Conclusion. In 1080, King Blot Sven fought to preserve Norse religion. He lost. But here's the thing. He wasn't fighting to preserve mythology. He was fighting to preserve a way of life. A system where local communities controlled their own religious practices, where kings earned legitimacy through ritual, not just force, where religion was something you did with your community, not something you privately believed. That's what we lost. Not just some cool stories about Thor's hammer. The irony is that we remember the myths, the entertaining parts, better than any other dead religion. But the actual living practice, the community feasts, the local rituals, the sacred sites, the ways people actually experience their religion day to day, gone. Erased so completely that we're still arguing about basic facts. When people say the Vikings converted to Christianity, what they mean is a few kings made a political decision that dismantled an entire civilization's religious framework in less than a century. And they were so effective that most people today don't even realize how much was lost. I'll be diving into what really happened at those last pagan temples soon, so make sure to subscribe and keep an eye out for that video. Thanks for watching.